The cold bit through my thin coat as I hurried up the marble steps of the Belmont Club, my breath forming clouds in the December air. Chicago had turned vicious overnight, the kind of cold that made your bones ache and your fingers forget how to bend. Inside, warmth and laughter spilled through the glass doors, a world I served but never entered. I was 20 minutes early for my shift, but Carmen, the floor manager, liked us invisible until the exact moment we were needed. I pushed through the service entrance, shedding my coat in the cramped staff room where the fluorescent lights hummed and flickered. My uniform black dress, white apron, sensible shoes, hung on a hook with my name tag already pinned. Ilara. No last name. We didn't need last names here. We were hands that poured wine, bodies that navigated between tables, ghosts who anticipated needs before they were spoken. The main dining room glowed like a jewel box, crystal chandeliers, white linens, the soft clink of silverware against porcelain. I took my station near the private dining alcoves, where the real money sat. The kind of money that didn't look at prices, that spoke in quiet tones about things I couldn't begin to understand. Tonight felt different, though. Security had doubled. Men in dark suits with earpieces stood at strategic corners, their eyes constantly moving. Carmen had pulled us aside before service, her voice tight. VIP section tonight. No questions, no lingering, perfect service. I balanced my tray and moved through the room, refilling water glasses, clearing plates, existing in that peculiar space between visible and invisible. Then I felt it, a gaze that didn't slide past me like all the others. I glanced up and met eyes the color of smoke and steel across the room. He sat alone at a corner table, a man who wore his suit like armor, dark hair swept back, a face that could have been carved from marble. He wasn't eating. He was watching. My pulse kicked up, but I kept moving. One of the other servers, Becca, nudged me as we passed in the service corridor. "See the guy in the corner? That's Dante Caruso. Owns half the city, they say." The name meant nothing to me then. I was clearing table 6 when my phone buzzed in my apron pocket. I ignored it. We weren't allowed personal calls during Servikey, but it buzzed again, insistent. Then a third time. My heart clenched. Only one person called like that. I glanced at Carmen, caught her eye, mouthed emergency. She frowned but nodded toward the service hall. I slipped away, my hands already shaking as I pulled out my phone. St. Catherine's Hospital lit up the screen. I answered in a whisper, but the nurse's words hit like a fist. Grandmother had collapsed, pneumonia. They were admitting her now. Could I come? I switched without thinking, my voice rising in desperate check as I promised I'd be there within the hour, asking about specialists, about costs, about whether she'd been conscious when they brought her in. When I hung up, my whole body was trembling. I turned to head back, to grab my coat, to explain to Carmen that I had to leave, consequences be damned. But a man stood blocking the corridor. Not security, one of the servers from the VIP section, his face tight with urgency. Mr. Caruso requests you join him at his table." I blinked. I have to leave, family emergency. He knows, that's why he's asking. Nothing about this made sense, but something in the man's tone told me refusal wasn't really an option. I followed him through the dining room, aware of Carmen's shocked stare, of the other diners' curious glances. The man with the steel-gray eyes watched my approach with an expression I couldn't read. Up close he was even more unsettling. Not because he was threatening, he hadn't moved, hadn't changed expression, but because of the absolute stillness that surrounded him, as if the room bent around his presence. "Sit," he said. Not a command exactly, but not a request either. I remained standing. "I'm very sorry, sir, but I have a family emergency. I need to." "Your grandmother, St. Catherine's pneumonia." His voice was low, measured, with the barest trace of an accent I couldn't place. "Sit, Ilara, we'll handle it." The use of my name, just my first name, as if we were already familiar, sent ice down my spine. I sat. He pushed a glass of water toward me. "You speak Czech." It wasn't a question. "Yes." "Fluently." It's my first language. Something shifted in his expression, a calculation completing. I have a proposition for you. I need someone who can navigate between English, Czech, and Italian with discretion. Someone who understands how to be invisible when necessary and present when required. You already know how to do this. My throat was dry. I'm a waitress. You're observant, composed under pressure, and you need money for your grandmother's care. He leaned back slightly. I'm offering you a temporary position, 3 months, transportation, accommodation, a salary that will cover specialist care and whatever else she needs. In return, you assist with translations and logistics for my business operations in Europe. What kind of business? His mouth curved, not quite a smile, the kind that values discretion. Every instinct screamed at me to refuse, to walk away, to run. But my grandmother's face flickered in my mind, her tired eyes, her insistence that I not worry, that she'd be fine. The hospital bills that were already piling up from her last scare. My own exhaustion from working double shifts and still barely scraping by. I need to see her first, I said. He nodded once, then gestured to someone I hadn't noticed standing in the shadows near the alcove. A woman in a tailored suit appeared, her phone already in hand. Valentina will arrange a car. You'll go to St. Catherine's now. I've already called ahead. Dr. Kavar, a respiratory specialist, will assess your grandmother tonight. Take the time you need. Tomorrow morning, a driver will bring you to my office and we'll discuss terms properly. I stared at him. Why? Because I need you, he said simply. And you need what I can provide, simple logistics. He produced a card from his jacket pocket, placed it on the table between us. Expensive stock, minimal text, Dante Caruso, a phone number, an address in the financial district. I took the card. My fingers brushed his for a moment, and I felt the warmth of his skin, the calluses that suggested his hands knew work beyond signing papers. This isn't charity, he added. You'll earn every dollar. I stood, my legs somehow still steady. I'll think about it. I know you will, he said, and those gray eyes held mine. But you've already decided. Valentina touched my elbow, guiding me toward the exit. As I glanced back, Dante Caruso had already turned his attention to a document on the table, as if our conversation had never happened. But I could still feel the weight of his gaze, the way it had pinned me in place and seen through every wall I'd built. The car waiting outside was ridiculous, a black sedan with leather seats that smelled of money and power. Valentina sat beside me, her phone glowing as she typed rapid-fire messages. Dr. Kavar is one of the best in the city, she said without looking up. Mr. Caruso retains him for consultations. Your grandmother is already in a private room. I can't afford. It's handled. She finally looked at me, her dark eyes sharp but not unkind. Mr. Caruso invests in people he finds useful. Consider tonight in advance. The hospital corridors blurred past as I rushed to find my grandmother's room. She looked so small in the bed, oxygen tubes in her nose, monitors beeping steadily. But her eyes were open, alert, and when she saw me, she reached out a hand. I took it, sank into the chair beside her, and let myself cry for just a moment. Malaska, she whispered in Czech. Don't cry, I'm too stubborn to leave you yet. Babichka, they said you collapsed at the community center. My own fault, forgot to take my medication. She squeezed my hand. But they're being very kind here, very thorough. They said a specialist is coming. I thought of the man at the Belmont Club, the card now burning in my pocket. Yes, I said, a specialist. When Dr. Kavar arrived an hour later, he spent 45 minutes examining my grandmother, asking questions in fluent Czech that put her at ease. His diagnosis was measured but clear. The pneumonia was treatable, but she needed rest, better medication management, and regular monitoring. Things that cost money I didn't have. After he left, I sat in the quiet room and listened to my grandmother's steady breathing. Valentina had disappeared but left her card on the small table near the door. V. Rossi, executive assistant to Dante Caruso. I pulled out Dante's card again, studying it in the dim light. The address was in the Gold Coast, the kind of building I'd walked past 1,000 times without ever imagining I'd step inside. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Car will collect you at 9 a.m. Address attached. Take the time you need tonight. VC. VC, Valentina Caruso, or just coincidence? I stayed until the nurses gently suggested I let my grandmother sleep. As I stepped into the cold Chicago night, a car was already waiting, the same black sedan. The driver opened the door without a word. "I can take the bus," I said. "Mr. Caruso's instructions, miss." The driver's tone suggested this wasn't negotiable. The ride back to my apartment in Logan Square took 20 minutes. The driver waited until I was safely inside before pulling away. I climbed the 3 flights to my studio, unlocked the door, and stood in the middle of the small space that held my entire life. A bed, a table, a tiny kitchenette, books stacked on every available surface. I thought about my grandmother's face, the relief when she realized the care she was receiving. I thought about my bank account, the negative balance I'd been avoiding. I thought about Dante Caruso's eyes and the way he'd said, "You've already decided." He was right. I fell asleep fully clothed on top of my covers, too exhausted to even undress. When my alarm buzzed at 7, I felt like I'd been hit by a truck. But I showered, dressed in the only professional outfit I owned, a navy dress I'd thrifted 3 years ago, and braided my dark hair into submission. The car arrived precisely at 9. This time, the driver introduced himself. Marcus, ex-military by the look of him, polite but alert in a way that suggested he was more than just a chauffeur. The Caruso building rose 60 stories above Michigan Avenue, all glass and steel and quiet wealth. Marcus led me past the main lobby to a private elevator that required a key card. We rose in silence, the city spreading below us like a map of light and shadow. The doors opened directly into a reception area that could have been featured in an architecture magazine. Floor-to-ceiling windows, minimalist furniture, fresh flowers on a console table. Valentina appeared immediately, greeting me with a professional smile. "Miss Novikova, welcome. Mr. Caruso is in a meeting, but he'll see you shortly. May I offer you coffee, tea?" "Coffee, please, black." She gestured to a seating area where I perched on the edge of a leather sofa that probably cost more than 6 months of my rent. The coffee arrived in a delicate cup, strong and perfectly brewed. I sipped it slowly, trying to settle my nerves. Through a glass wall, I could see part of an office, a massive desk, more windows, a man's silhouette on a phone call. Dante Caruso, conducting business with the same stillness I'd observed at the restaurant. When the door finally opened, Valentina nodded me through. Dante's office was both austere and luxurious, dark wood leather art that looked original and expensive. He stood by the windows, hands in his pockets, still on his phone. He lifted a finger one moment and concluded his call in rapid Italian that I understood perfectly. He was discussing logistics, a shipping delay, compensation for a nervous client. When he ended the call, he turned to face me fully. In daylight, he was even more striking. Sharp cheekbones, a mouth that suggested he rarely smiled, and those eyes that seemed to catalog every detail. "You came," he said. "You knew I would." "Yes." He moved to his desk, gestured for me to sit. "But I respect that you made the choice. How is your grandmother?" "Stable. Dr. Kavar was excellent." "Good. Valentina has arranged for continued care, including a visiting nurse 3 times a week once she's discharged." He opened a folder on his desk. "Now, terms." He slid a document across to me. I scanned it, my heart rate climbing with every line. 3 months, as he'd said. Salary, more than I made in a year at the Belmont Club. housing provided, travel expenses covered, medical care for my grandmother no cap. In return, translation services, cultural liaison, discretionary assistance with business operations. What exactly are these business operations? I asked. I manage investments across several sectors: real estate, import-export, hospitality. Much of my work requires coordination with partners in Central Europe. You'll attend meetings, translate, help navigate cultural nuances. Nothing illegal. The pause before illegal was infinitesimal, but I heard it. And if I say no? Then you walk away. Dr. Kavar's services tonight are a gift, not leverage. He leaned back. But I think you won't say no, Alara, because you're smart enough to recognize an opportunity when you see one. I looked at the contract again, at the numbers that could change everything. I need to be able to visit my grandmother. Of course, we'll work around her care schedule. And if I'm asked to do something that crosses a line? His gaze sharpened. Then you tell me. I don't operate through coercion. I operate through mutual benefit and trust. You'll find I'm very clear about boundaries. I picked up the pen he'd placed beside the contract. My hand hovered over the signature line. 3 months, I said, and then I'm free to leave. 3 months, he agreed, unless you choose to stay longer. I signed. The scratch of pen on paper felt like stepping off a cliff. Dante took the contract, glanced at my signature, and something that might have been satisfaction flickered across his face. He pressed a button on his desk, and Valentina appeared almost instantly. Show Miss Novikova to her accommodation, and prepare the briefing file for tomorrow's flight. My stomach clenched. We leave for Prague in the morning, Dante said, reading my expression. Your grandmother will be in excellent hands. I've arranged for a security detail to check on her daily and report to you. Any concerns, and will return immediately. This was moving too fast, spinning beyond my control, but I'd signed the paper. I'd made the choice. Valentina led me out, back to the elevator, down to street level where Marcus waited with the car. We drove north this time, toward Lincoln Park, pulling up to a renovated brownstone with a discreet entrance. Mr. Caruso owns the building, Valentina explained as we climbed to the second floor. You'll have this unit for the duration of your contract. She unlocked the door to reveal a furnished apartment that was 10 times the size of my studio. Living room, full kitchen, bedroom with an actual queen bed, bathroom with a tub. Windows overlooked a tree-lined street. Your wardrobe will be delivered this afternoon, Valentina continued. Business appropriate, some formal wear for events, passport. Yes, I have one, but it's expired. Give it to me, we'll expedite the renewal. She handed me a phone, newer model, sleek. This is yours. My number is programmed, as is Mr. Caruso's. Emergency contacts, car service, everything you might need. I took the phone, feeling like I was holding a leash disguised as a gift. Valentina's expression softened slightly. I know this is overwhelming, but Mr. Caruso is a fair employer. Do your job well, maintain discretion, and you'll be treated well in return. Have you worked for him long? 8 years. She moved toward the door. Get settled, pack light for Prague. We'll only be there 2 days before moving to Milan. The briefing file will be sent to your phone tonight. Read it thoroughly. After she left, I wandered through the apartment in a daze. I opened cabinets to find them stocked with basics: coffee, tea, bread, milk. The refrigerator held fresh fruit, cheese, sandwich fixings. Even the bathroom had toiletries, all high-end brands I'd never been able to afford. I sat on the bed and called my grandmother. She sounded stronger already, asking about my day in that way she had of knowing I was keeping things from her. I took a new job, I told her in Czech. It pays better. I'll be traveling some, but I'll call every day. Traveling where? Europe, Prague first. A long pause. Be careful, my Lasco. Jobs that pay too well often cost more than money. Her words followed me as I unpacked my meager belongings. Around 4, a delivery arrived. 3 garment bags and 2 boxes. Inside were clothes I could never have imagined wearing, tailored slacks and blouses, dresses in rich fabrics, a wool coat that fit perfectly, leather boots, even undergarments in exactly my size. I should have felt grateful. Instead, I felt exposed, as if someone had taken my measurements while I slept. That night the briefing file arrived on my phone. Dense paragraphs about Dante's business interests, profiles of his key contacts, notes on cultural protocols in Czech and Italian business settings. There were also files on his rivals, competitors, people to watch carefully. One name appeared repeatedly: Lorenzo Rixai, described as a regional competitor in import logistics. The language was careful, neutral, but I could read between the lines. This wasn't just about legitimate business. Dante Caruso operated in spaces between legal and illegal, in gray zones where power and money flowed through handshakes and unspoken agreements. I'd known it when I signed, but seeing it laid out in sanitized corporate language made it real in a way that frightened me. My phone buzzed, a message from Dante's number. "We leave at 7 a.m. Marcus will collect you at 6:30. Bring only essentials, everything else will be provided. Sleep well." I didn't sleep well. I lay awake watching shadows move across the ceiling, wondering what I'd agreed to, wondering if my grandmother's words were prophecy or warning. At 6:30 sharp, Marcus knocked. I followed him down to the car, my small overnight bag feeling pathetically inadequate. We drove to a private terminal at O'Hare, where a jet waited on the tarmac, sleek, white, impossibly expensive. Dante stood at the base of the stairs, dressed in charcoal gray, phone to his ear, gesturing to someone I couldn't see. When he spotted me, he ended the call and extended a hand to help me up the stairs. Inside, the jet was more living room than aircraft. Leather seats, a conference table, a small galley. Valentina was already seated, laptop open, typing with focused intensity. "Good morning," Dante said, settling across from me. "Help yourself to breakfast. We'll go over expectations once we're airborne." A steward, young, efficient, silent, served coffee and pastries. I took a croissant I couldn't taste and tried not to stare out the window as Chicago dropped away beneath us. Once we leveled out, Dante pulled out an iPad and angled it so I could see. "This week's schedule," he said. "Prague 2 days. Meetings with development partners regarding a hotel acquisition. You'll translate and observe. Milan 3 days. Dinner with investors, a gallery opening, contract negotiations. You'll need to read the room, pick up on subtext, alert me to anything I might miss." "You speak Italian," I said. "Why do you need me?" "Because people reveal more when they don't realize you understand everything. And because having you there sends a message. I invest in quality, in sophistication, in cultural fluency. I'm window dressing." His eyes narrowed. "You're an asset, there's a difference." For 8 hours, we flew east across the Atlantic. Dante worked, fielding calls in 3 languages, reviewing documents, making decisions with the kind of quiet authority that suggested he never had to raise his voice. Valentina matched his pace, occasionally pulling me aside to clarify protocols or introduce context I'd need. Somewhere over the ocean, exhaustion caught up with me. I dozed in my seat, jolting awake when we hit turbulence. Dante was watching me, his expression unreadable. "Sorry," I mumbled. "Don't be, rest while you can." He returned to his work, but I noticed he dimmed the lights on his side of the cabin. We landed in Prague near midnight local time. Stepping onto the tarmac, I breathed in air that tasted of home, cold, slightly damp, familiar. A car waited, and we drove through streets I'd left behind when I was 19, chasing dreams I'd thought I'd find in America. The hotel was in Mala Strana, a historic building transformed into luxury accommodation. My room was elegant, all warm wood and soft lighting. A bottle of wine sat on the desk with a note, "Welcome home, DC." I poured a glass and stood at the window, looking out over the vault of a river, the Charles Bridge lit up like a necklace. Somewhere in this city, I'd once believed I could be someone. Now I was back, tethered to a man whose motives I didn't understand, playing a role I hadn't auditioned for. My phone buzzed. A message from the hospital: "Your grandmother is improving. She asked about you, Nurse Maria." I texted back my thanks, then sent a message to Dante's number. "Thank you for the wine." His response came immediately: "Sleep. Tomorrow requires focus." I finished the glass and climbed into bed, my body confused by time zones and choices. But for the first time in years, I fell asleep without worrying about money, about my grandmother, about how I'd survive tomorrow. I woke to sunlight streaming through gauze curtains and a text from Valentina. "Breakfast at 8 lobby. First meeting at 10. The clothes delivered to my room were perfect. A tailored charcoal suit, cream blouse, low heels. I braided my hair, applied minimal makeup, and studied myself in the mirror. I looked professional, competent, like someone who belonged in Dante's world. Downstairs, he was already at a corner table, reading a newspaper in Czech, a coffee at his elbow. He glanced up as I approached and gestured to the seat across from him. "Sleep well." "Well enough." A waiter appeared, pouring coffee, presenting a menu. I ordered in Czech and Dante's mouth curved, almost a smile. "Your accent is perfect, no American influence at all." I worked hard to keep it. "Why?" I thought about my grandmother, about the language that connected us, about refusing to lose the part of myself that remembered where I came from. Because forgetting where you're from makes it easier to lose who you are. Something shifted in his expression, a flicker of recognition or understanding. "Wise," he said quietly. The meeting was at a development office near Wenceslas Square. Dante met with two men, developers with ambitious plans and nervous energy. I translated, watched, listened. The conversation was ostensibly about hotel renovations and profit margins, but underneath ran currents of tension: permits that were hard to acquire, officials who needed convincing, investors who required assurances. Dante navigated it all with precision. He never promised what he couldn't deliver, never threatened, but his presence alone seemed to shift the room's gravity. By the end, both men were nodding, smiling, relieved. Outside, as we walked to the car, Dante asked, "What did you notice?" The older one was lying about the permit timeline. The younger one is worried about a third partner who wasn't mentioned. "Good, anything else?" "They're afraid of you, but they need you more than they fear you." He opened the car door for me, his hand briefly at the small of my back, warm, proprietary. "That's the balance I maintain. Fear without need is useless. Need without fear is weakness." We returned to the hotel for lunch, a private dining room where Valentina joined us to review the afternoon schedule. But as I reached for my water glass, I caught Dante watching me with an intensity that made my breath catch. "Is something wrong?" I asked. "No," he said, "just recalibrating expectations." "Meaning?" "Meaning you're more perceptive than I anticipated. That's useful, but it also means I need to trust you more completely." He leaned forward slightly. "Can I trust you, Alara?" The question felt loaded, dangerous. "I signed a contract, I'll honor it." "That's not what I asked." I met his eyes, those gray depths that revealed nothing. "You can trust me to do my job. Beyond that, I don't know yet." He nodded slowly. "Fair enough." That afternoon, we visited a property Dante was considering, a 19th-century building near the castle, elegant bones hidden under decades of neglect. As we walked through dusty rooms, he asked my opinion, actually listened when I pointed out structural concerns or suggested historical restoration approaches. "You studied architecture?" he asked. "No, but I grew up in a house built in the 1700s. I learned what lasts and what crumbles. Where is that house now? Sold, after my parents died. My grandmother and I needed the money to survive. He absorbed this without comment, but his hand found the small of my back again as we navigated a precarious staircase, steadying me, protecting me, claiming me in small increments. That evening, a formal dinner with city officials and business leaders. I wore a black dress from the wardrobe delivered to my room, simple but elegant and pearls, small, tasteful, that had appeared in a box on my bed. No card, but I knew who'd sent them. Dante wore a tuxedo that transformed him from businessman to something darker, more dangerous. When he offered his arm, I took it, and we descended to the hotel's grand ballroom together. The dinner was theater, power displayed through manners and subtle dominance. I translated when needed, observed constantly, played my role as Dante's sophisticated assistant. But I also caught him watching me between courses, his gaze following the line of my throat, the way I'd pinned my hair up to reveal the pearls. During coffee, one of the officials, a man in his 50s with restless eyes, leaned toward me and asked in English, "How does a beautiful woman like you end up working for a man like Caruso?" I smiled politely. "Mr. Caruso values competence and discretion. I'm fortunate he saw both in me." "Fortunate," the man repeated, his tone suggesting he thought otherwise. Dante's hand appeared on my wrist, light but unmistakable. "Commissioner Navak, I believe your wife is trying to get your attention." The official retreated immediately, chastened. Dante didn't release my wrist, his thumb brushing my pulse point. "Thank you," I said quietly. "I don't share," he replied just as quietly. The words sent heat through me, confusing, unwelcome. I pulled my hand away gently. "I'm not yours to share or keep." "Not yet," he said, and returned to his conversation with the mayor, leaving me breathless and angry and something else I couldn't name. We left Prague the next morning, flying to Milan. The city embraced us with golden light and architectural grandeur. Our hotel overlooked the Duomo, all Gothic spires and impossible beauty. This time Dante's schedule was denser. Meetings stacked back to back, dinners with investors, a late-night session with lawyers reviewing contracts I could barely follow. I translated, observed, learned the rhythms of his world, brutal in its efficiency, elegant in its execution. On the third day, he took me to lunch on a rooftop terrace, just the two of us. The waiter knew him, served wine without asking, disappeared discreetly. "You're doing well," Dante said, raising his glass. "Better than I expected." "What did you expect?" "Competence, yes, but also hesitation, questions, fear. You have none of those things." I sipped the wine, considering. I'm terrified, but I learned a long time ago that fear is just information. It tells you what matters. "And what matters to you?" "My grandmother, my independence, keeping enough of myself that I recognize my reflection." He studied me for a long moment. "What will you leave behind, Ilara?" The question caught me off guard. "What do you mean?" "When you die, and we all do eventually, what will you leave behind? Money, property, memories." He gestured toward the city spread below us. "I've spent my life building an empire, but empires crumble. What remains?" "Why are you asking me this?" "Because you're the first person in years who seems real. Everyone else is a mirror, reflecting what they think I want to see. But you—" He reached across the table, his fingers brushing mine. "You refuse to pretend." I pulled my hand back. "I'm your employee, Dante. Don't confuse honesty with intimacy." "They're the same thing," he said softly. That evening we attended a gallery opening. Contemporary art, champagne, beautiful people speaking in hushed tones about meaning and value. Dante moved through the crowd with practiced ease, introducing me as his associate, never his assistant. I recognized the subtle elevation, the way he positioned me beside him rather than behind. It was both honor and danger. Near midnight, as we examined a painting, abstract, violent splashes of red and black, a man approached. Mid-40s, expensive suit, smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Dante," he said in Italian, "I didn't expect to see you here." "Lorenzo." Dante's voice was cordial, but I felt his body tense beside me. "How's business?" "Thriving. I've expanded into Prague, actually. Beautiful city." His gaze slid to me. "Is this the advantage everyone's talking about, your new consultant?" The pause before consultant was deliberate, mocking. I smiled and replied in perfect Italian, "Lorenzo Rixai. I've read about your expansion. Ambitious, considering the regulatory challenges in Czech markets." His smile faltered. "You're well informed. Mr. Caruso values preparation." Dante's hand found my waist, a clear signal of ownership and protection. "Ilara is invaluable. I'm sure you understand the importance of loyal, competent people." Lorenzo's eyes hardened. "Of course, loyalty is everything." He nodded to both of us. "Enjoy the evening." As he walked away, I exhaled slowly. That was a warning, Dante finished. He wanted me to know he's watching, that he's noticed you. Fear trickled down my spine. Is that dangerous? Potentially. He guided me toward the exit, his hand still at my waist. But I've handled Lorenzo before. He tests boundaries. I make sure he doesn't cross them. In the car back to the hotel, Dante made a call, rapid Italian, clipped sentences. Security measures, I realized. Adjustments to our schedule. When he hung up, he turned to me. "I'm moving you to different hotel tomorrow, more secure." "I'm fine where I am." "Ilara," he waited until I met his eyes. "This isn't negotiable. Lorenzo plays games, and sometimes those games involve leverage. You're leveraged now." The reality of my situation crashed over me. I'd signed a contract, taken his money, let myself believe this was just translation work. But I'd entered a world where people were assets, where business rivalries played out through intimidation and worse. "I want to go home," I said quietly. "I know, but not yet." His voice was gentle, almost kind. "I'll keep you safe, that's a promise." "Your promises might not be worth what you think they are. They're the only currency I have that matters." The car pulled up to the hotel. Dante walked me to my room, waited while I unlocked the door, then caught my wrist before I could slip inside. "Ilara." I turned. He was close enough that I could smell his cologne, something dark and expensive, cedar and smoke. His thumb brushed my pulse point again, feeling the rapid beat. "You're afraid," he said. "Of course I'm afraid." "Don't be, not of me." He leaned down slowly, giving me time to pull away, to protest. But I didn't move. His lips brushed mine, gentle, questioning, and for a moment I let myself respond, let myself feel the heat and hunger beneath his control. Then reality reasserted itself and I stepped back, breaking the contact. "This can't happen," I said, my voice shaking. "It already has. I work for you. That can change." I shook my head. "You're not hearing me. This, whatever this is, it's a mistake." Something flickered in his eyes, hurt or anger quickly suppressed. "Then it's a mistake I don't regret." He stepped back, giving me space, his expression shuddering. "Good night, Ilara. Pack light tomorrow. We're moving at noon." I watched him walk down the corridor, his shoulders straight, his stride unhurried, as if our kiss hadn't just rewritten every boundary between us. Inside my room, I locked the door and leaned against it, my lips still burning, my heart a traitor in my chest. I called my grandmother, needing the anchor of her voice. "You sound strange," she said immediately. "Ma Lasco, what's wrong?" "Nothing, just tired." Lying to me doesn't change the truth. I smiled despite myself. "When did you get so wise?" "I've always been wise. You're just finally old enough to notice." We talked for 20 minutes about nothing important, her therapy, the nurses, the terrible hospital food. But underneath, I heard her worry, her questions she wouldn't ask. Before we hung up, she said, "Remember who you are, Elara. No job is worth losing yourself." Her words followed me into sleep. Morning brought chaos. Valentina at my door, hurried packing, Marcus with 3 security personnel I'd never seen. We moved to a smaller, older hotel in a quiet neighborhood, my new room smaller but somehow safer, tucked on an upper floor with a guard at the elevator. Dante arrived that afternoon, a folder under his arm, his expression serious. "We need to talk," he said. I gestured him to the small sitting area. He sat across from me, the folder unopened on his lap. "Last night was unprofessional," he began. "I apologize." "Accepted. But I'm not sorry it happened." I looked away. "Dante, let me finish." He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "I've built my life on control. Control of situations, of people, of outcomes. It's how I've survived, how I've succeeded. But you," he paused, searching for words, "you're my weakness, and weaknesses get people killed in my world." "Then let me go home." "I can't, not yet." He opened the folder, showed me a photograph. Lorenzo Rixai with 2 men I didn't recognize standing outside the Prague hotel we'd stayed at. He's escalating, moving pieces into position. If I show weakness now, if I send you away, he'll see it as victory, and he'll push harder. "So I'm a pawn in your chess game." "No," his voice sharpened. "You're the queen, the piece I can't afford to lose." I stood, needing distance. "What do you want from me, Dante?" He stood too, closing the space I'd tried to create. "Your trust, your partnership, your—" He stopped, jaw tight. "I want you to choose to stay, not because of the contract, not because I'm paying for your grandmother's care, but because you want to be here. And if I don't, then I'll arrange your return to Chicago. I'll honor every financial commitment. Your grandmother will continue receiving care. You'll walk away free." The offer was everything I'd wanted, the escape I'd dreamed of last night. But looking at him now, at the vulnerability he was trying to hide, at the genuine fear beneath his control, I realized walking away wasn't as simple as I'd thought. "I need time," I said. He nodded. "You have until the end of the week. We have one more meeting in Milan, then we return to Prague for a final negotiation. After that, you decide." He moved toward the door, then stopped. "For what it's worth, I respect that you're considering leaving. Most people in your position would have run already or would be trying to leverage the situation for more money. You're doing neither." "What am I doing?" "Trying to stay yourself. It's rare and precious." After he left, I sat by the window watching Milan's evening traffic, trying to untangle my thoughts. My phone rang. The hospital. "Miss Novikova, your grandmother asked us to call. She wants to speak with you." When I called her room, her voice was stronger than it had been in weeks. "They're letting me go home tomorrow," she said happily. "The visiting nurses will come, and I'll be in my own bed." Relief washed through me. "That's wonderful, Babichka. This man you work for, he arranged all this." "Yes." A long pause. "What's his name?" "Dante Caruso." The silence stretched so long I thought we'd been disconnected. Then, "Caruso. Is his father's name Marco?" My breath caught. I don't know why. "Because I knew a Marco Caruso many years ago, before your mother was born. He helped me and your grandfather when we were in trouble." Her voice turned distant, remembering. "He was dangerous but decent, if that makes sense. He believed in debts and honor." "What kind of trouble?" "The kind we don't speak about. But we owed him a debt we never repaid. He disappeared before we could." Ice flooded my veins. "Babichka, what are you saying?" "I'm saying maybe this isn't coincidence. Maybe debts passed down through generations. Maybe you're repaying something I started." "That's insane." "Is it? Ask your Dante about his father. Ask him why he really sought you out. Then decide what you want to do." The call ended, leaving me shaking with questions I wasn't sure I wanted answered. But I needed to know. I needed the truth, whatever it cost. I texted Dante, "We need to talk, tonight." His response, "My sweet, 1 hour." Dante's suite was more apartment than hotel room. Living space, office area, bedroom behind a closed door. He'd removed his jacket, loosened his tie, poured 2 glasses of whiskey. He handed me one without asking if I wanted it. "What's this about?" he asked. I took a drink, let the burn steady me. "My grandmother knew your father, Marco Caruso." He froze, the glass halfway to his lips. "How?" She didn't explain. Just that he helped her and my grandfather when they were in trouble, that they owed him a debt. Dante set down his glass carefully. "What else did she say?" "That debt's passed down, that maybe me working for you isn't coincidence." I met his eyes. "Is she right?" For a long moment he said nothing. Then he moved to a desk, pulled out a leather-bound journal and opened it to a marked page. He handed it to me. The entry was in Italian, dated 30 years ago, written in precise script. Prague. Assisted Novikova family. Extraction from political complications. No payment requested. Debt noted. Below it in different ink, more recent. Second generation. Granddaughter Ilara, Chicago, opportunity. My hands trembled. "You've been tracking my grandmother's family for 30 years. My father kept records of every debt owed and owing. He believed in balance. When I inherited his organization, I inherited his ledgers." Dante took the journal back. "I didn't know your grandmother when I saw you at the Belmont Club, but I knew your name. I'd been watching your circumstances, waiting for the right moment. To collect a debt my grandparents never agreed to pay." "No," he closed the journal. "To offer an opportunity that would benefit both of us. Your grandmother and grandfather helped my father when no one else would. They hid him from people who wanted him dead at great risk to themselves. He never forgot. Neither did I. So this whole thing, the job, the money, the care for my grandmother, it's all repayment. It's repayment that became something else." He stepped closer. "Yes, I sought you out because of your connection to my father's past, but I kept you because you're brilliant, capable, and you see through the masks people wear, including mine. And the kiss last night had nothing to do with debt and everything to do with wanting you." I paced to the window, my thoughts spinning. "I don't know what's real anymore. You've manipulated me from the beginning. I've been honest about what I need from you. The rest, the feelings, the attraction, that's as real for me as it is terrifying." I turned. "Why terrifying?" "Because caring about people makes you vulnerable, and in my world, vulnerability gets exploited." He ran a hand through his hair, the first truly uncertain gesture I'd seen from him. "Lorenzo Rixai knows about you now. He knows you matter to me. That puts you in danger. Then let me go. I'm trying to protect you. By keeping me in a cage, however gilded. By keeping you alive." The words hung between us, stark and brutal. I finished my whiskey, set the glass down, and made a decision. "I'll stay until the end of the 3 months, as contracted, but after that I'm going home, and this," I gestured between us, "this stops now, professional boundaries, nothing else." Pain flashed across his face. "If that's what you want." "It's what I need." He nodded slowly. "Then that's what we'll do." I left his suite feeling hollowed out, angry and sad and confused all at once. The truth had changed everything and nothing. I was still bound to him by contract, by my grandmother's debt, by the twisted logic of obligations that span generations. But now I knew, and knowledge, however painful, was better than living in beautiful ignorance. The next morning we had breakfast in silence. Valentina briefed us on the day's meeting, final negotiations for the Prague hotel property. We'd fly back that afternoon, sign contracts tomorrow. The meeting was in a private conference room, Milan's elite gathered to discuss millions of euros. I translated mechanically, my mind elsewhere, until I caught something in Italian, a subtle threat buried in polite language. One of the investors suggesting that without certain assurances, tragic accidents could occur. I didn't translate it directly. Instead, I turned to Dante and said in English, "The gentleman to your left just made a thinly veiled threat against your Prague partners if this deal doesn't proceed on his terms." The room went silent. Dante smiled, cold as winter. "Tell him," he said quietly, "that I don't respond well to threats, and that accidents, as he calls them, can happen to anyone, even investors who forget their place." I translated, softening nothing. The investor paled. The meeting concluded quickly after that, terms suddenly flexible, everyone eager to leave. Outside, Dante gripped my arm. "That was dangerous." "That was my job. You said to tell you if anyone crossed a line." "I also said maintain discretion." "Would you rather I'd let him threaten your people?" His expression shifted, the anger giving way to something else. "No, you did exactly right." On the flight back to Prague, he sat beside me instead of across from me, close enough that our shoulders brushed. "You didn't have to defend me," he said quietly. "I wasn't defending you, I was honoring the contract, and," I paused, searching for truth, "and I don't like bullies." "Neither do I." We flew in silence after that, but the air between us felt different, less adversarial, more allied, as if we'd crossed some invisible boundary into partnership. The Prague signing was scheduled for the following evening, a formal affair at a historic guild hall. I wore a dress that Valentina had somehow produced overnight, deep emerald silk that made my skin glow and my eyes look darker. The pearls again, but this time Dante added a bracelet, simple, elegant, probably worth more than my car. "You don't need to give me jewelry," I said as we drove to the venue. "I'm not giving it to you. I'm adorning you appropriately for the setting." He glanced at me. "You represent me tonight. I won't have anyone think I don't value you." At the guild hall, everything was candlelight and old wood and the weight of history. We signed documents, shook hands, smiled for photographs. I translated toasts and small talk, played my role flawlessly. But something felt wrong. I noticed security personnel I didn't recognize, conversations that stopped when I approached, Lorenz Rixai in the corner speaking with a man whose face I knew from the briefing files. A financial investigator with a reputation for taking down legitimate businesses through regulatory warfare. I caught Valentina's eye, tilted my head toward Lorenzo. She followed my gaze, stiffened, and immediately pulled out her phone. Moments later, Dante appeared at my elbow. "We're leaving." "But the signing is done, now we go." His hand at the small of my back firm, urgent, guided me toward a side exit. Valentina flanked my other side, Marcus ahead of us, two security personnel behind. "What's happening?" I asked. Lorenzo tipped the financial police. "They're coming to question me about money laundering, to disrupt the deal, to humiliate me publicly." Dante's voice was level, but I heard the fury beneath. "I won't give him the satisfaction." We reached a service entrance, slipped into a waiting car. It pulled away as official vehicles rounded the corner, lights flashing. In the backseat, Dante made a call, his tone cold and precise. "Activate contingency 7. Move the grandmother tonight. Prep the Innsbruck location." Fear spiked through me. "What are you doing?" He ended the call. "Lorenzo will use your grandmother as leverage if he can find her. We're moving her to a private facility in Austria. Better care, complete security." "You can't just kidnap my grandmother." "I'm protecting her. There's a difference." "Is there?" My voice rose. "Or are you just moving pieces on your board without asking what they want?" He turned to me, his eyes blazing. "What I want is irrelevant. I made you a target by bringing you into this world. Now I have to keep you both safe, even if you hate me for it." Tears burned my eyes, angry and futile. I don't hate you, but I don't trust you either. I know, his voice softened. I don't blame you. We drove north, leaving Prague behind, climbing into the mountains. The landscape turned steep and cold, snow covering everything in pristine white. Hours later, we reached a chalet perched on a hillside, stone and glass and warmth spilling from windows. Inside, a fire burned, and staff waited with food and drinks. Valentina led me to a suite overlooking the valley, my luggage already unpacked. Rest, she said gently. Your grandmother will arrive in the morning. She's being transported safely. After she left, I stood at the window watching snowfall, feeling trapped and protected in equal measure. This beautiful cage, this gilded prison. A soft knock. Dante stood in the doorway, changed into casual clothes, jeans, a sweater looking more human, more vulnerable. May I come in? I nodded. He moved to the fire, staring into the flames. I've made a lot of mistakes in my life. Hurt people, broken rules, crossed lines I justified as necessary. But bringing you into this world, putting you at risk. He turned. That might be the worst thing I've done. Then why did you do it? Because I'm selfish. Because I wanted something real in the middle of all the performance. Because you looked at me like I was just a man, not a monster or a god. He moved closer. And because I'm falling in love with you, and that's the most dangerous thing of all. The confession hung between us, raw and impossible. You can't love me, I whispered. You don't even know me. I know you're brave and sharp and kind. I know you protect the people you love with everything you have. I know you see the world clearly and refuse to pretend otherwise. He reached out, his fingers brushing my cheek. I know I don't deserve you, but I want to try to be someone who does. I closed my eyes against the tears. This can't work. Why not? Because your world is violence and secrets and debts that span generations. Because I want a life that's mine, not inherited or obligated. Then I'll give it to you. His thumb traced my jaw. Let me finish this. Let me neutralize Lorenzo, move my operations toward legitimacy, create space for something different. 3 months, like the contract says. At the end, if you still want to leave, I'll let you go. But give me a chance to prove I can be more than what I've been. And if you can't, then you'll go home knowing I tried. I opened my eyes, met his gaze, those gray depths that held so much pain and hunger and hope. Against every instinct, against all logic, I nodded. 3 months, I said, then I decide. Relief flooded his face. He pulled me close, his forehead resting against mine. Thank you. We stood like that for a long moment, not quite kissing, not quite separate, balanced on the edge of something that terrified us both. My grandmother arrived the next morning, confused but surprisingly calm. The private medical team had explained the situation gently, and Valentina had packed her belongings with care. When she saw me, she opened her arms and I ran to her like a child. Malasco, she murmured, what have you gotten yourself into? I don't know anymore. She pulled back, studied my face. But you care about him. I don't want to. That's how you know it's real. She glanced past me to where Dante stood watching. May I speak with him? I nodded, stepping aside as she approached him. I couldn't hear what they said, but I saw her take his hand, saw him listen with absolute focus, saw him nod and promise something that made her expression soften. Later she told me, his father saved us when I was young and stupid and involved with the wrong people. We would have died without his help. I owe the Caruso family my life, which means I owe them yours. That's not how it works. In their world it is, but, she smiled gently, I think he's trying to change that, trying to turn debt into choice. Can people like him really change? Can any of us? We're all trying to be better than we were. The days at the chalet took on a strange rhythm. Dante worked remotely, managing his operations from a secure office. I helped when needed, translated, observed. But mostly, we existed in a bubble where the outside world seemed distant and manageable. He was different here, less guarded, more present. We took walks in the snow, played chess by the fire, he won always, cooked meals together in the massive kitchen. My grandmother watched us with knowing eyes, saying nothing but seeing everything. One evening, after she'd gone to bed, Dante asked me about my parents. They died in a car accident when I was 16, I said. Ice storm, a truck that couldn't stop. Instant. I'm sorry. It was a long time ago. My grandmother took me in, raised me the rest of the way. I looked at him. What about yours? My mother left when I was 8, couldn't handle what my father was. He raised me alone, taught me everything about the business, about power and obligation. His voice flattened. He died when I was 25, heart attack during a negotiation. I inherited his empire and his enemies in the same moment. Do you miss him? Every day, and I resent him every day for leaving me this legacy. You could walk away. He smiled without humor. No, I couldn't. The only way out is transformation, make it into something I can live with. Is that possible? With your help, maybe. He showed me his plans the next week, documents outlining a 5-year strategy to shift his operations from gray areas toward full legitimacy. Selling off certain properties, investing in transparent enterprises, cutting ties with problematic partners. It was ambitious, dangerous, and possibly genuine. Lorenzo won't let this happen easily, he said. He profits from the shadows. He'll see my transformation as betrayal. So what do you do? I remove his leverage. His power comes from secrets, what he knows, what he threatens to reveal. I'm compiling everything. His tax evasion, his smuggling operations, his connections to corrupt officials. I give it all to the authorities, let them handle him legally. That's risky. Less risky than the alternative. He met my eyes. I won't kill him. I won't become my father, but I will protect what's mine. And what's yours? You, if you'll stay. The month passed. My grandmother grew stronger, the alpine air and medical care working miracles. Dante moved operations forward, slowly reshaping his organization. And I found myself softening toward him, seeing past the power to the man trying desperately to be better than he'd been made. On a clear morning, with snow sparkling under sunlight, we received word. Lorenzo Rixai had been arrested on multiple charges. The evidence Dante had compiled had been delivered to authorities through intermediaries. Lorenzo's empire was crumbling, his leverage gone. It's over, Dante said, reading the message. Is it? The immediate threat, yes. He looked at me. Which means you're free. The 3 months are almost up. You can go home if you want. I thought about Chicago, my tiny apartment, my life before. It felt like looking at someone else's memories. My grandmother likes it here, I said instead. She could stay. I'd make sure she has the best care. And me. You can have anything you want. He moved closer, his hand cupping my face. A job, a partnership, a life, or nothing from me if that's what you choose. I covered his hand with mine. I want the truth. No more debts, no more obligations inherited from the past. If I stay, it's because I choose you, not because I owe you. Done. He kissed me then, properly this time, deep and hungry and full of promises we were both afraid to speak aloud. When we finally broke apart, I whispered, I'm choosing you, but you have to keep becoming someone worth choosing. Every day, he promised, for the rest of my life. My grandmother died peacefully 6 months later in her sleep, in a warm bed in the chalet. We buried her in a small alpine cemetery with a view of the mountains she'd loved. Dante stood beside me through the service, his hand firm in mine, his presence the anchor I needed. She told me something before she died, I said afterward, as we stood at her grave. She said your father loved my grandmother once, that the debt was really just love's echo across time. Dante absorbed this quietly. Maybe that's what all of this has been, love trying to find its way home. 5 years later, we stood in the same cemetery, this time for a different ceremony. We married there, with the mountains as witnesses, with Valentina and Marcus, and a handful of people we trusted. I wore emerald silk and pearls, and Dante looked at me like I was the only thing that mattered in his reconstructed world. His organization was legitimate now. Hotels, investments, clean money flowing through transparent channels. He'd kept his promise, transformed himself piece by piece, choice by choice. And I'd built something of my own, a consulting firm that helped businesses navigate international markets with cultural intelligence. We were partners in every sense, equal and chosen. That night in the chalet that had become home, he presented me with a final gift, the leather journal his father had kept, all the debts and obligations. "Burn it," he said. "Let the past stay buried. What we build now is ours alone." I held the journal, feeling the weight of generations. Then I carried it to the fire and watched it burn, the pages curling and blackening, the debts turning to ash. From cold anonymity on Chicago streets to warm certainty and alpine safety, this was the journey we'd made. Not through obligation, not through inherited debt, but through choosing each other over and over until choice became something stronger. Love that answered love, echoing across time. I watched the last page blacken and curl, the ink dissolving into smoke. Dante's arms came around me from behind, his chin resting on my shoulder. "No regrets?" he asked quietly. "Only that we lost so much time to fear." He turned me to face him, his hands framing my face. "Then let's not waste any more." We made love that night with the windows open, cold air mixing with firelight, our bodies writing a new story that belonged only to us. Afterward, wrapped in blankets, he told me about the final piece of his transformation, a foundation he wanted to create, focused on helping refugees and displaced families navigate new countries, new lives. "In honor of your grandmother," he said, "and my father, all the debts they carried turned into something that heals instead of binds." I kissed him, tasting salt and promise. She would have loved that. "Will you help me build it?" "Every step." The foundation launched a year later, headquartered in Prague with satellite offices across Europe and North America. I ran the cultural integration programs while Dante handled logistics and funding. We hired translators, legal advisors, housing coordinators, people who understood what it meant to be caught between worlds. The work was hard, often heartbreaking, but it felt right. Like we were finally using everything we'd learned about power and leverage in systems to create openings instead of debts. One afternoon, 3 years into our marriage, I was reviewing applications in our Prague office when Valentina knocked on my door. "There's someone here to see you," she said, her expression carefully neutral. "She says it's personal." The young woman who entered was maybe 20, dark-haired, nervous. She clutched a worn envelope. "Mrs. Caruso, I'm sorry to bother you. My name is Petra Novikova." My heart stuttered. "Novikova." "Your grandmother was my great-aunt. I found letters she'd written to my grandmother about you, about everything, about the Caruso family and old debts." She held out the envelope. "I thought you should have these." I took the letters with shaking hands. My grandmother's handwriting, addressing her younger sister, explaining things I'd never known. How Marco Caruso had helped them escape political persecution in the 1960s. How they'd hidden him when his enemies came hunting. How friendship and danger had intertwined until they couldn't tell where one ended and the other began. The final letter was dated just before her death. "My dearest sister, I've watched Alara fall in love with Marco's son, and I see history trying to repeat itself, but better this time. Marco and I loved each other once before duty and fear pulled us apart. I chose safety, he chose power. We both spent our lives wondering what might have been, but Alara and Dante, they're braver than we were. They're choosing each other despite everything, rewriting what we couldn't. If you're reading this, I'm gone, but tell our story. Tell them love doesn't have to be a debt passed down. It can be a gift given freely, generation after generation, until someone finally gets it right. I think they have. I read it twice, tears streaming down my face. Petra watched me with sympathetic eyes. I have her journals too, if you want them. Everything about that time. Yes, I managed, please. After she left, I sat with the letter for a long time, understanding finally clicking into place. Dante and I weren't paying our grandparents' debts. We were finishing their love story, the one they'd been too afraid to complete. That evening I showed him the letter. He read it in silence, his jaw tight with emotion. My father kept a photograph, he said finally, hidden in his desk, a young woman by the Charles Bridge laughing. I always wondered who she was. Your mother? No, someone from before, someone he loved and lost. He looked at me. It was her, wasn't it, your grandmother? I think so. Then we're not breaking a cycle, we're healing it. He pulled me close, and we stood at the window watching Prague's lights flicker on across the river, 2 generations of love finally finding its resolution. The foundation grew. We opened a center in Chicago, deliberately located in Logan Square, blocks from where I'd lived in that tiny studio. We hired people who'd been invisible, waitstaff, janitors, drivers, and trained them as translators, cultural liaisons, advocates. People who knew what it meant to be overlooked, who could see others who'd been rendered invisible by circumstance. On the center's opening day, I gave a speech to a room full of refugees, community leaders, and donors. Dante stood in the back, watching with pride evident in every line of his body. My grandmother used to tell me that we're all carrying debts we didn't choose, I said. Debts inherited from our parents, our countries, our histories. But she also taught me that we have the power to transform those debts into gifts, to take what we owe and turn it into what we give freely. Afterward, a young mother approached me, a child on her hip, uncertainty in her eyes. I just arrived from Syria, she said in halting English. I don't know how to navigate here. Everything is strange. I knelt down so I was eye level with her son. What's your name? Omar. Hi, Omar. My name is Ilara. I was once new here too and very scared. But people helped me and now I get to help you. Would that be okay? He nodded solemnly. I stood, took the mother's free hand. We're going to help you find housing, enroll Omar in school, connect you with other Syrian families. You're not alone anymore. She started crying, and I held her while she wept with relief and exhaustion and hope. Dante watched from across the room, and when our eyes met, I saw everything we'd built reflected back, from cold nights and desperate choices to warm certainty and purposeful action. That night back in our Chicago apartment, larger than my old studio but deliberately not ostentatious, Dante cooked dinner while I worked on case files. This had become our rhythm, shared labor, mutual support, partnership expressed through daily choices. I got an interesting call today, he said, plating pasta with the precision he brought to everything. From the Ethics Commission. They want me to testify about organized crime transition strategies. I looked up, will you? I think so. If I can help others find a legitimate path out, it's worth the exposure. You've come a long way from the man who wouldn't let anyone see weakness. He brought the plates over, sat beside me. I had a good teacher. I didn't teach you anything you didn't already know. You taught me that strength and vulnerability aren't opposites, that the bravest thing is letting someone see you clearly and trusting they'll stay. I leaned against his shoulder. You made that easy. Liar, I made it terrifying. Well, yes, but terrifying and easy aren't mutually exclusive. We ate in comfortable silence, the city humming below us. Later, washing dishes together, Dante said casually, I've been thinking about children. My hands stilled in the soapy water. Have you? Would you want them with me? I turned to face him. Are you asking because you think you should, or because you genuinely want to? Both. I want to build something that outlasts us. Something that isn't an empire or an obligation, just a family, love without debt attached. That's a lot of pressure to put on hypothetical children. Or a lot of freedom to give them. He touched my face, soap bubbles and all, but only if you wanted to. I thought about my grandmother, about the cycles we'd broken and healed, about the foundation we'd built and the lives we'd changed, about love that echoed across generations, trying to get it right. Yes, I said, I want that with you. Our daughter was born 2 years later, during a spring snowstorm that blanketed Prague in unexpected white. We named her Marie, after my grandmother, and gave her both our last names, Marie Novakovaca Russo. She had Dante's gray eyes and my dark hair, and from the moment she arrived, she was ours completely. No debts, no obligations, just the pure gift of a new life. Holding her in the hospital room, Dante cried for the first time since I'd known him. I don't know how to do this, he whispered. How to be a father without teaching her my mistakes. You teach her your transformations instead, I said. Show her that people can change, that love is stronger than legacy, that choosing each other matters more than anything we inherit. He kissed Marie's forehead, then mine. I can do that. And he did. He was patient and present, reading her stories in Italian and English and Czech, teaching her that language was connection, not separation. When she was old enough to understand, we told her about her great-grandparents, both sets, and the complicated love that had wound through generations to create her. So you and Papa were meant to be? She asked when she was 7, processing the story. Not meant to be, I corrected. We chose to be, that's better. Why? Because meant to be suggests we had no choice. But we did. Every day we chose each other. That's what makes it matter. She thought about this seriously. I want to choose like that when I grow up. Then we'll teach you how. The foundation expanded across Europe and into Asia. Dante gradually handed off day-to-day business operations to trusted partners, focusing instead on the work that mattered, helping others find pathways from shadows into light. Lorenzo Rixai died in prison, his empire dissolved, his legacy nothing but cautionary tales. We didn't celebrate, but we acknowledged the closure. One more chapter of the past finally, definitively ended. On our 10th anniversary, Dante surprised me with a trip back to the Belmont Club in Chicago. It had changed ownership, been renovated, but the bones were the same. We sat at the corner table where we'd first really talked, where he'd made his proposition, and I'd been too desperate to refuse. Do you remember what you said to me that night? He asked. I said a lot of things. You said, I'm very sorry, sir, but I have a family emergency. Even then, even scared and desperate, you were polite, dignified. I was trained to be. No, that was you. That's always been you, this core of grace that nothing can touch. He reached across the table, took my hand. Thank you for taking a chance on a dangerous man with a terrible offer. Thank you for becoming someone worth the risk. We ordered wine, better than anything I could have afforded back then, and toasted to the journey. From cold to warm, from debt to choice, from fear to love that answered love. Walking out afterward, past the place where I used to enter through the service door, I felt the ghost of my younger self watching. That exhausted, invisible woman who'd believed she'd never have choices. Look, I wanted to tell her, look what you become, look what you survive, look what you choose. Dante's hand found the small of my back, that gesture that had evolved from possession to partnership, and we walked into the Chicago night together, no longer running from cold, but moving toward warmth we'd built with our own hands. Our story wasn't perfect. We argued, disagreed, struggled with the weight of what we'd been and who we were becoming. But we kept choosing each other through every difficulty, every doubt, every moment when walking away would have been easier. Because that's what love is in the end. Not destiny or debt, not obligation inherited or imposed, but choice made freely, over and over, until choice becomes commitment, and commitment becomes the foundation of everything you build. From a freezing night and a desperate gamble to this, partnership, purpose, family, we'd traveled further than geography could measure. We'd transformed debts into gifts, obligations into freedoms, inherited pain into chosen joy. And when Marie asked, years later, how love stories are supposed to end, I told her the truth. They don't end, Ma Alaska. They keep going, echoing forward, each generation adding its verse until the song becomes something beautiful, something worth singing. She smiled, understanding in her gray eyes, her father's eyes, holding wisdom that skipped generations. Then this isn't an ending, she said. No, I agreed. It's just another beginning. And it was, is, will be. Love answering love, echoing forward, finally getting it right.